Once upon a time, there was a city built on the ruins of the city that came before it. And that city too was built on the ruins of another, even older city. And in that city, there was a politician. And that politician had in their belly the rumblings and stirrings of a desire for power. They heard a rumour. They followed the rumour, followed the story to its source, away from the city, up to the top of the tallest mountain. They came to a cave. The cave looked out across all the land. In the cave was a withered old man, ancient as days, skin like paper, bones sticking through. Are you the one that is called Skin and Bones? Some call me that name, yes. Is it true that you are as old as time itself? Is it true that you are a god? It is true that I am as old as time itself. But I am no god. Though I do know them, they do not deign to call me one of their own. If you know the gods, surely you share some of their power. I have power of my own. Power over words and the way they shape the world. Do you grant wishes for a price? I will pay anything, anything at all. Promise me then that you will never ask me to leave this cave. Done, done, done. What is your wish? I wish for the power to speak words that anybody who hears them is compelled to obey. Stick out your tongue then. The politician stuck out his tongue, and old Skin and Bones licked it. Tongue of my tongue, speak words that all who hear must obey. The politician left the cave, went down into the city and began to speak. And when they spoke, crowds gathered. People listened. When the people listened, they found themselves compelled to obey. The politician grew powerful. They grew rich. They took over the whole land and gathered its resources, sat upon them like a dragon on a hoard. The mountains were eaten. The fields began to turn to dust. The forests were cut back to the edge of the map. The sky filled with smoke, and the seas turned black with poison. And Skin and Bones looked out across the land and said to himself, soon. One day the politician sat on their throne, looked out at the land, and still they were not happy. Still a burning in their stomachs said, I need more, there's something I lack, something I need. They looked out at the mountain, and they thought to themselves, that is the finest view in the whole land, the most beautiful place to look out. I should build my palace there, then I will be happy. He remembered Skin and Bones and the promise. Pah! Pah! He was an old fool. I have gained everything myself. By my own doings, he gave me nothing. So the politician went up to the cave of Skin and Bones and told him to leave. Skin and Bones stood up with a shrug and a smile, walked to the door, turned back with a twinkle in his eye and said, I was just about to leave anyway. I've seen what you've done to my land. And Skin and Bones walked. The politician began to build their palace, but Skin and Bones walked, and as they walked they muttered, they whispered under their breath in a language long forgotten, curses, spells. And where they walked, the rains stopped. The land dried up, cracked, broken, drought, famine, pestilence, disease, despair, war, death. All followed after him, and Skin and Bones walked for 7 long years, before he came to the top of a mountain. There at the top of the mountain, the half-built ruins of a palace. In the centre of the ruins, a cave. Skin and Bones sat back down in his cave. He was all alone. All about him was a wasteland, nothing but dust, rust and ash, fields of sand, forests of stumps, dry rivers leading down to polluted seas, and the wind blowing a sad, dirging lament on the empty eye sockets of abandoned buildings. Old Skin and Bones was alone, and he was glad. He watched the years turn into decades, tick into centuries, bleed on, and eventually his beady eyes saw what he was waiting for. There, the cycle was being renewed again. Old Mother Mud sowed the seeds of the future. Father Sky cast the rain on the land. Green shoots erupted from the earth. Plants, flowers, trees grew. Forests spread. Beasts, birds, animals emerged. And one day, eventually into this paradise, there came humans. They lived. They loved. They laughed. They died. And when they did, their bodies returned to the earth. And it was a long time before the first tree was chopped, before the first clearing made, the first village built, the first field sown. But after that day, more villages, roads, towns, fences and walls chaining the land up, and one day, on the ruins of the old city, a new one was built. And one day, in that city, there was a priest. And the priest had the same burning desire. The priest had the hunger to speak. The priest desired to be believed. They followed a story, followed a rumour, went to the cave of Skin and Bones, made the promise. What do you wish for? To speak and be believed by all who listen. Stick out your tongue. Tongue of my tongue, speak words that are believed. The priest went down to the city. The priest spoke. Everyone gathered. The people believed them. They raised a great church, told the land that this world is a lie. Give your gold to me and I will let you into paradise. And the mountains were eaten. The fields turned to dust. The forests chopped back to the edge of the map. The smoke filled the sky and the oceans turned black with poison. And still they weren't happy. Still they longed for something more. Looked at the mountain, thought, I will build a church there. Remembered their promise. Pah! An old fool, he gave me nothing. My power was my own. They went there. Demanded Skin and Bones leave. Skin and Bones smiled, walked to the door, turned back and said, when you see your God, remember to tell him who sent you. It won't be long. The church began to be built. Skin and Bones walked down the road. Rain stopped, drought, famine, death, despair, war, 7 long years. Skin and Bones reached the top of a mountain. There the ruins of a church. There the cave. They sat back down. All about them a wasteland. Nothing but dust, rust and ash. Years into centuries, the cycle reborn, Mother Mud, Father Sky, humans in the wild. The tree was chopped, the villages were made, towns, cities on the ruins of the old. A new one was built, taller and brighter than all the ones that came before it. And in that city was a poet. And the poet had the desire, a new desire, a burning longing to speak the truth. They followed the story, followed the rumour, came to the cave of Skin and Bones. Is it true that you are Skin and Bones? Is it true that you are old as time itself? Are you a god? Do you grant wishes? My name is Skin and Bones. I am as old as time itself. I know the gods, but I am not one of them. Yes, I have power. Yes, I grant wishes for a price. What is your price? My price is that you never ask me to leave. Done! Stick out your tongue. Tongue of my tongue. Speak words that are the truth. The poet returned to the city. They spoke, and when they spoke, people listened, crowds gathered. They became famous throughout the land for speaking such truths as brought tears of joy, of sorrow, laughter. And still, they weren't quite satisfied. They couldn't quite put the truth, the whole truth, into perspective. They looked across the land and saw there the mountain. And they thought to themselves, at the top of the mountain is where I can see everything in the land. Maybe there I will see the whole truth and tell it. So they went to the mountain. Have you come to evict me? No. I've come to ask if I can sit with you for a while. Okay. They sat together, watched the sun set on the land. The mountains were just starting to be eaten, the fields just starting to turn to dust. The forests were almost at the edge of the map. The seas were turning black and the skies were just filling with smoke. And the poet said to Skin and Bones, what would have happened if I'd asked you to leave? Skin and Bones told them. The next morning the poet thanked them, went down to the city, gathered a great crowd, thousands upon thousands, and said, people, I have a new poem for you, a new story, the truth of the land and the cycles we are trapped in, the cycles we must break if we are to live with this world. And the story begins like this. Once upon a time, there was a city built on the ruins of the city that came before it.